Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, May 14th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about the United States Senate elections and the Democratic Party and how they, surprisingly enough, seem to be holding on to a lead in a number of key and crucial battleground states amidst Joe Biden's falling polling numbers. Now, we've spent a long time talking about the national race, the presidential race of Biden versus Trump. We made an entire video yesterday unpacking the very interesting poll results that we got out of the New York Times and Siena College when they did their swing state polling data. And their national headline, and rightfully so, was that Trump leads in 5 key states as young and non-white voters express discontent with President Biden. But underneath this all was a set of Senate polls that were done in the same battleground states that is summarized in the same headline from the New York Times as Democrats holding leads in 4 crucial races that could decide Senate control this coming November. Now, we spent a long time talking about this year's upcoming Senate elections, and to put things into perspective, Republicans should be happy. They should be happy because this Senate map is the most lopsided in their favor out of any of the 3 Senate map iterations that could have come up in an election season like this one. This map here with a tremendous amount of toss-up seats, the overwhelming majority of them coming from the Democratic Party, leaves Republicans with a baseline of 38 and Democrats with 10 less Senate seats at 28. And to show you even further, and I think this needs to be hammered in really every time we talk about the Senate elections, exactly what a Senate map would look like if the 2020 presidential election results were put on to this Senate map. What would happen here would be that Democrats win in some of the same states that they won in 2020, for example, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. They win in states like Maine, but then they lose practically everywhere else. And so what this tells us here is that Republicans at a baseline should have a very strong advantage. At the end of the day, the Republican Party, this coming November, should be able to win a Senate map like this one with an advantage 52 to 48. Now, this is also coupled with the fact that Democrats are running alongside, running very strong contenders in some of these battleground states. But this is a map here just taking the presidential 2020 results and applying it to 2024. Let's switch things up a little bit. Let's apply the 2016 election results. Wisconsin goes red, Michigan goes red, Pennsylvania goes red, and so does Arizona. Where does that bring us? A 56 to 44 advantage for the Republican Party in the Senate map. And so where we are here is really what it does show you is the Republican advantage at the very baseline. Republicans have a very, very strong chance at winning Senate control, and ultimately that is where they should be. And yet the title of this video, and yet the title of the article from the New York Times, and yet the takeaways from many main political pundits here is that Democrats actually have a very high chance of maintaining Senate control against all odds. Because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to characterize all of the states that Democrats and Republicans seem to universally agree upon are competitive in this election. Now we're going to add in a few that Democrats are hoping might be competitive and Republicans are hoping might be competitive. But ultimately that brings us to a toss-up map here of just 9 Senate seats. 49 for the Republicans are locked, safe and solid, and 42 for the Democrats. Now, if we were to split these states evenly and to say Republicans win even, same amounts as Democrats, odd number obviously, but Republicans would undoubtedly end up with the Senate majority. Anywhere from 53 to 54 seats here, it would be, in every case, a blowout with these Senate elections. And honestly, that's what should be happening right now. If you remember the conversation and discussion we had about the 2022 midterm elections, we remember just how favorable this Senate map was also to Republicans in 2022. Joe Biden was unpopular in all of the battleground states. He was unpopular on the national level, and Republicans led in battleground states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, and yet only ended up winning 1 out of the 5 that I just mentioned. And that's because the polls were wrong. That's because the polls had predicted that Republicans were going to win in these states. Well, not only are the polls not predicting that Republicans are going to win in these states, they are now predicting that Democrats have the advantage in these key and crucial states. Meaning that if we were to take a look at what the national polls are saying in these states, the Democrats, despite Joe Biden losing support in some of these states, maintain a lead. Let's take a look at some direct comparisons and really just understand exactly how strong these Senate Democrats are. When Democrats fielded candidates for the 2024 election, they got nearly all of their incumbents to decide to run for re-election. The notable exceptions here are Debbie Stabenow in Michigan, Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona, and practically everywhere else is pretty solid. Ben Cardin in Maryland, but we'll talk about why I really don't think that's super important. But in some of these states where it really mattered, you have Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, John Tester in Montana, Jackie Rosen in Nevada, Sherrod Brown in Ohio. Democrats did something right. Republicans don't seem to be as strong. And there's a reason for that. The candidates that they nominated are of 2022 caliber, meaning that it's people like Dr. Oz, or Herschel Walker, or Blake Masters, or Adam Laxalt. And while that may be something that works in some reality, evidently not this one, it very well might not work again. Because here's the thing. Donald Trump leads Joe Biden in almost all of these states. 5 out of the 6, Donald Trump has the upper hand against Joe Biden. Pennsylvania by 3 points, Arizona by 7 points, Michigan by 7 points, Georgia by 10 points, Nevada by 12 points. And yet, in the same exact line of questioning amongst the same exact group of voters here, they are saying Arizona, Ruben Gallego wins by 4. Pennsylvania, Bob Casey wins by 5. Nevada, Jackie Rosen wins by 2. Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin wins by 9. Take a look at the map here, you apply it, Nevada goes blue. Arizona goes blue. Pennsylvania goes blue. Wisconsin, likely blue. And where does that bring us? 46 for the Democrats, 49 for the Republicans, 0 flipped seats. It's good for Democrats because it means here that despite Biden really at any point in time, even when you move to the likely voter column, the numbers are equally as strong for Democrats. And it has been a consistent and reoccurring trend here that works both ways. On one end, it's good for Democrats because it shows that the baseline, the voters in these states aren't conservative. They're not Republicans. They're not these MAGA voters here that are Trump 2016, 2020. They're Trump 2024, and that's where Biden's campaign needs to make improvements on. But in this upcoming election, they're willing to back Democrats. We find it in some of these important states. For instance, when you take a look at states like Pennsylvania. Right now, according to the poll here, Donald Trump leads by 3 points. And yet, in a significant number of these polls, in fact, the majority that asked the question about a generic ballot poll, if you don't know what that is, essentially it's a poll here where amongst the line of questioning, Trump versus Biden, Casey versus McCormick, they also ask, at the baseline, would you rather have a Democrat or a Republican represent you in Congress, represent you in the Senate, represent you at large? And Democrats almost always have the upper hand. And that shows that on a baseline, Democrats do well. Which means in these down ballot races, while Democrats certainly still have to fight for it, and Democrats certainly still have to make an effort to win these states, it won't be as hard fought as the presidential. Equally, it shows that there is an appetite to elect Democrats. But right now, that doesn't extend to President Biden. But it doesn't mean that it can't. What it shows here is that some Democrats clearly have cracked the code. People like Tammy Baldwin, who near a majority when 11% of the electorate is undecided, tell you everything you need to know. That these Democrats have maintained their base, maintained their popularity, maintained their constituency from 2016 or 2018 in that election, 2012 in that presidential. These candidates here in some ways know what they're doing in a way that it seems as if they are outperforming President Biden. And so it's a doubly good news here that it shows that Democrats do well down ballot, but also there's an opportunity for victory on the top of the ballot. And again, it isn't just the New York Times. When we talked about the New York Times poll yesterday about the presidential, I said I wouldn't spend all my time talking about a single poll. And that's right, because it's a consistency thing here. I think what I've really expected to see that with Biden's numbers, in fact, sometimes getting worse in these states. I think that's the only reasonable way we can look at it. For instance, when you take a look at the presidential election polls, the general election data, you see that in states like Arizona, Trump's lead is expanding. In states like Nevada, Trump's lead is expanding. In states like Wisconsin, Trump's lead gets pretty stagnant but maintains itself. In Michigan, Trump's lead back in the advantage. In Pennsylvania, now consistent in what was a Biden lead for about a month. North Carolina, not much new movement there. In Georgia, though, an improvement for President Trump. And yet, with the improvement, Democrats really don't see much of a change. When we take a look at the Senate polls, for instance, in Arizona, sure, a narrowing up matters, but it's not too significant and not too far off from what the Hill and Emerson College were predicting, and Noble Predictive Insights averages this out to about a Ruben Gallego victory by 5. When you're looking at states like Nevada, sure, a tied race is closer than what some of the other polls are showing us, but they still show us Democrats ahead. And keep in mind, this is a Trump plus 12 electorate on the registered voter ballot and a Trump plus 13 electorate on the likely voter ballot. And yet, Jackie Rosen, Sam Brown are tied. Think about that for a moment. And again, I question the validity of some of these polls because I think they're too far off from being in reality. But I will say this. What Democrats proved in 2022 is that the polls aren't always off for Republicans. In fact, in many cases, especially in states like Nevada, that have had a consistent trend of underestimating the Democratic Party, we could very well see it again in 2024. And what I show you here, too, is just to say that even though the polls might be underestimating Democrats, in most cases, they still show them winning. They still show them doing exactly what you might expect in matchups like Ruben Gallego versus Carrie Lake, who lost her governor race in 2022 despite being ahead in the polls by 4 points. When we look at states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, sure, these are narrowed margins, but they're still victories. It's still a 6-year term that Democrats get to serve out in the U.S. Senate from these respective swing states. In every single swing state, you find that Democrats are leading when it comes down to the head-to-head matchups. Even in some of these more recently added swing states, like my home state of Maryland, where it shows David Trone and Angela Alsobrooks winning by 11 and 10 points respectively. You see it too, again, expanding well beyond where we are when it comes down to the New York Times polls. The Hill and Emerson College show Lisa Slotkin ahead by 2. When you're looking at states like New Jersey and other states that really don't need too much polling, you still find, and Minnesota, Democrats hold a strong advantage. You see it time and time again. In these states too. Not much recent polls out of states like Ohio, but in the matchups that we do see, we find that Sherrod Brown leads by 4. In these important states here, Democrats are doing quite well. And so when you look at a map like this, and you take a look at it and you say, what are the polls telling us? Well, Maryland now has Alsobrooks and Trone up by 10 and 11. You now have Ohio polls that are showing Sherrod Brown in the advantage. Hill Emerson College poll that are showing Democrats in the advantage in Michigan. And new polls out of Montana that show Jon Tester ahead. What does this tell us? Republicans might be leading in Texas in some of the most recent polls here, but they're telling us that Democrats are doing well, and it still hasn't changed. Now, I don't spend much time talking about Senate elections on this channel, and there's a reason for that. Because a lot of the times, I don't like to talk in circles and circles and circles, but sometimes I have to continue talking about this. Because I made a video about this a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And not the same exact thing, but it's a conversation that we're having about how the numbers seem to be changing on the presidential, and sometimes worse for Biden, worse for Democrats. And the movement is very minimal on the Senate level. In fact, in some cases, the movement doesn't exist because Democrats maintain themselves. There's a reason the consensus map here, when it comes down to the Senate forecast here, shows Democrats in the advantage. Particularly is news. Republicans are limited at 50. Larry Sabato's crystal ball, Democrats are at 48. Republicans are at 50. Think about that. Republicans can't win an outright majority in a map that if the 2016 election was applied, which Republicans swear up and down the ballot, they're going to do even better than that in this election. They're going to win Nevada. They're going to win New Hampshire. They're going to win Minnesota. They can't even get past 50 in a map like this. Interesting. Sabato's crystal ball. U.S. News. Cook Political Report. Stuck at 50. Inside Elections. Stuck at 50. Elections Daily. Stuck at 50. See Analysis. Stuck at 50. Well, Democrats aren't there either. This map was never made for that to even be possible. The map they're working with, in some reality, was, and it could have been this one, was impossible for Democrats to maintain Senate control. They're defending a Trump plus 20 state like Montana, a Trump plus 8 state like Ohio, while being simultaneously down on the presidential ballot in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, all of these states that matter so incredibly much. And yet, the Republican Party can only muster up 50 seats, and that's with an automatic flip in West Virginia, and luck of the draw that Texas and Florida are running alongside a presidential ballot. A ballot post-DeSantis, post-Trump in Florida too. But Texas is interesting there because this is the same map from 2018. The Democrats also saw losses in. That Republicans just can't seem to replicate those losses again, even though they won Indiana in 2018. They won Missouri. They won North Dakota. They won Mississippi. They won Tennessee. They won Texas. They won almost all of these battleground states that had strong Republican support in the last presidential election. So it's fascinating that they can't do it this time. West Virginia has a retiring Democrat. Easily Republican flip. But the fact that Montana, and not a single one of these ratings can be rated as likely or lean red. The fact that Ohio, and not a single one of these ratings can be ranked as likely or lean red, is a testament to, one, the Democratic Party's ability to organize and maintain their level of support in these battleground states, but the Republican Party's inefficiencies. The 2022 midterms should have been a wake-up call. That easily winnable races were lost because of an unwillingness to choose candidates that might be slightly more electable, but slightly less conservative, or slightly less MAGA. Think about that for a moment. That's where we were in 2022. And we didn't know at the time. I predicted that Dr. Oz was going to win Pennsylvania. I thought that voters really wouldn't care. But they did. Not just on the Senate level, but the House level too. The governor level too. And they matter in this election too. This map here is only possible with a perfect storm, a perfect combination of strong Democratic incumbents and candidates and very weak Republican ones that are plagued by scandal. It's the story that has been told in the most recent midterm election that could very well be told again. And Republicans might look at this and say, I don't believe it. There's no reality in which Joe Biden is losing these states, but Democrats are also winning it. But I want to point you back to the 2022 midterms, where Biden was down in all of these states. His approval rating was abysmal on the national level. Republicans won the national popular vote, and yet Democrats pulled ahead in almost every single state. Not only did they pull ahead, but they expanded their Senate majority. I don't expect that to happen this time. I don't think Colin Allred is in for some shocking victory in Texas, or whoever is running in West Virginia, or whoever is running in Florida to have some shocking revelation where they flipped the state blue. I don't think that's going to happen. But 50-50 is a very likely outcome. And the fact that it is even that close, the fact that it is even within the realm of possibility, is a testament to the Democratic Party's support. Because even in the same exact poll that was supposed to be damning for Biden is uplifting for Democrats. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, but then a playlist for my 2024 Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today. Sorry, tomorrow.